In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a double exposure effect in Adobe Photoshop. And what that means basically is that you're going to have one photo appearing inside part of another photo. So you can see here I have these two photos. I have a photo of a skyline and I have a photo of a man, and I'm going to make the city skyline appear inside the photo with him and blend it together. So that what you need to do to set up your file is to make sure that you pick a picture of a subject first. So what I mean by a subject is I mean a picture of a person or an animal or maybe an object like a car, something that where it's just one main part of a photo and not a bunch of little things in the photo. So pick something with a subject, and then your next photo should be some type of landscape where it can be a city, it could be a forest, clouds, sky, something like that that doesn't really have just one subject. And that way your final effect, you can get something that looks like that. Double exposure works is by hiding parts of one photo and showing through to another part of a photo. So as you can see in my final project here, I have these things on the called layer masks on my layers tab. So you see I have the picture of the guy here, but wherever I have painted black, it's hiding that part of the photo. So he still has the background around him, but it's hidden because I have black painted on the layer mask. Wherever it's white, you can still see through it. So the same thing is happening here on the city. I have the same guy cut out here so that the city is only showing in the white area, and then I have black painted there so I can still see his face. So you notice if I go on my city and I do Control T and I move it around, you see that the whole picture of the city is there, but it's only showing through the part that I painted white. I know it's a little bit hard to see what the layer mask looks like when it's just a little thumbnail, so I went ahead and copied my layer mask out into another file so I could show you side by side how it's working. So you notice that everything that's black, it is blocking out that part of the photo, and everything that's white in this layer mask is showing through. It's like transparent. So just think of it as a kind of like a window. Wherever it's white, you can see the light. Wherever it's black, it's blocked out. So notice this layer mask here, how I have this blob on his face. This is where it's showing where his face is. And notice how I used a soft brush there so that it would fade. If you look on his shoulder and his neck, that's a hard line right there. And if you look over here on my art, you see I wanted that line to get cut hard out there and around his hair. I wanted that to be a hard line, but I wanted the city buildings to just blend softly into his face. I didn't want it to just be like cut out really hard. So when you're making your layer masks, think about using a really big, soft brush so that it fades very gradually. So now that you know what layer masks are and how they work, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start off with my subject photo, and the first thing I want to do is, you'll see over here this says background. Whenever you open a photo, it says background here, but I want to actually unlock that into a layer that I can edit it. So if you go over here on the right hand side of your background layer, if you click the lock, it unlocks it, and now it just becomes a regular layer. All right, so I want you to do that first to your subject photo. Then the next thing you're going to do is copy and paste your landscape photo on top of it. So you're going to do Control A to select it and Control C to copy it. And you can close it out. You won't need that anymore. And then you're going to go on your subject photo and do Control V. And I'm going to do Control T and make it bigger so it fills up more of the page. And what I recommend do after you press the check, what I recommend doing next is going over to your layers tab, and where it says opacity right here, click that little triangle to open up the slider, and I would recommend lowering the opacity just so that you can kind of position your photo where you want. So I have this lowered. Now I can go back to Control T and I can move it around. Like, I don't want it like this where the sky is in his hair. I want his whole hair to be buildings and everything. So I'm going to put the photo somewhere around like this. Now keep in mind, I know that it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, That's okay because I can use my layer mask to make that fade out and you won't even see it. So lowering the opacity helps you position the photo where you want, and then you can press check and then go back to opacity, and then you can turn it back up. Alright, so we're going to turn that layer off for now. We don't need to use that. We're going to work on taking the background off our subject photo next. Background off the photo is probably the hardest part of the whole thing. The rest of this is actually quite easy. So if you have a picture where the background comes off easily, then you're lucky. This one here is not too bad. There's just a couple of areas that are going to give me a problem, which are right here in his chin and hand area. Other than that, this tool here, the object selection tool, is going to work quite well. So I'm going to use this object selection tool on mine. You can use other tools if you wish, but this is the one that's going to work best for my photo. You might have to experiment to see which one is going to work for you. But I'm going to click on the object selection tool and go ahead and click that area there. So it gave me this mask, and I see it did a pretty good job, but I want to edit this a little bit further because there's some areas, like I said, right in here that I'm not too crazy about. So I'm going to go up to select and mask. At the very top you see select and mask. This will let you edit your selection a little bit better. Now over here under properties of this, I want you to use the same settings that I have so it looks the same, because there's a lot of different things that can make this look very different. I'm going to choose on white. So make sure you click on white, and then you can go over here where it says opacity. What that does is it shows you the mask. If I have the opacity on 0, I can't see anything about the mask. But if I bump it up a little bit, I can kind of see what it's not selecting and what it is selecting. So I'm going to zoom in on this area because I feel like the selection looks good everywhere else except for right here. So I'm going to zoom in on this part here. And I want to get his hair selected right there. So you can use these tools right here. These are different brushes. This one, the first one is the brush that Photoshop kind of guesses where to go, but it already didn't do a very good job of guessing there, so I'm going to skip that one. The next brush you have is the Refined Edge brush, which is pretty good for hair. And then you have this tool. It's just the regular brush tool. So I'm going to get a soft brush. So this is just like your brushes that you've painted with before. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get a brush that's not all the way hard but not all the way soft, you know, somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to make it a 25 point size. And I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to brush some of that hair back in because I don't really want it cut off there. I feel like the brush needs to be a little bit softer, so I'm going to go and decrease the hardness there because I kind of want this to be softer. Maybe I'll enlarge it by using my right bracket tool. Okay, that looks pretty good there. And then the other thing I want to do is get rid of that area there. So notice how on my brush right here I have plus and minus. So I've had it on plus. Now I want to switch it to minus because I want to erase that. So I'm going to click minus. And then here I want my brush to be harder because I'm going to cut it out right at his thumb. And I'm going to use my left bracket to make the brush smaller. I'm just going to cut out this little piece next to his thumb. Alright, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just want to show you how you can edit a selection to refine it a little bit more than the way Photoshop might have originally selected your photo. And then when you're done, just say OK. Now I am happy with that selection that I have, so I'm ready to make my layer mask. I want to go to Layer, Layer Mask, and what I want to do is I want to reveal means show. I want to show only what's selected. So everything that's not selected, I don't want to see it, but everything that is selected, I want to reveal or show it. So I'm going to click Reveal Selection, and now you see I have the background cut out. But what it did is it's not really cut out, like it's not gone. It's over here on my layer mask. So everything that's black is blocked out, everything that's white is showing through. So what I want to do now is put this same layer mask on my city picture so that I'm only seeing city inside of where my guy is selected. So what I need to do for that is to turn my city layer back on, and I want this same layer mask there. So the way I do that is, let me go back and click on it. Notice how on these layers you can click on the actual layer where the photo is, or you can click on the layer mask. So make sure that whenever you're making edits that you're on the layer mask instead of the actual photo. So I want to copy that whole layer to be over here as my layer mask. So the way you can do that is click on this layer mask and say select, load selection. So we're going to load the same selection that we have that's around the man's face. So you can see the little dotted lines are going there. Then we're going to go on our layer with the city and do the same thing we did before, where we go to layer, layer mask, and reveal selection. We only want to reveal or show what is selected. So there you go. Now you have the city only showing up inside where your layer mask is. So the next thing we need to do is actually edit that so that we can see some of the photo below it. We don't want it to look exactly like that. So what we want to do is paint some black on this so that we can see parts of the photo that's below it. So what I recommend doing is going over here to your color picker and pick black as your top color, say OK, and white as your background color. And then this little curve right here, if you click that, you can switch back and forth between those two colors. So if you're trying to paint something black to make it hidden, you do this. If you want to paint something white so you can see it, you can do that. So I'm going to start off painting black because I want to paint black on this layer mask so I can see the photo below it. So what I recommend for that is get your brush tool and definitely make your brush 0 hardness. You want a nice soft brush so that it blends, really subtly. You don't want it to be like a hard line. Like right here at his shoulder, like I said before, you want that to be a hard line, but where his face is, you want that to be softer. It doesn't matter what size brush. Remember your bracket keys next to your P. If you press your right bracket key, your brush gets big. If you press the left, it gets small. I want to get a pretty big brush because I'm just going to put like one dot on his face with a big soft brush. So ready, and just one little click, and there you go. You can start to see through to the other layer. So you see on my layer mask, I have a black blob on there now, and that's helping me see through his face. So I'm going to do that a couple more times because I want his face to be visible. And that's pretty much how I like that one to look as far as how much of the guy I want to see under it. Maybe if I want to be a little more subtle, you can go over where it says opacity and lower that. So maybe the next time I use the brush, it will be very subtle. So maybe I want a little bit of his neck showing through, but I don't want the building to totally be gone. Maybe his hand too. I do a couple clicks there. So that, I'm pretty happy with that. Now I want this bottom photo to blend. So remember on this one, we want to paint black to hide that. So again, I'm going to use a soft brush and paint black on the city because I want that to not look like it's cut off. Let me go back and put my opacity back up and just hit the bottom of this. And now you can see the city just looks like it fades into his clothes. You don't have that hard line because we pasted black right there. So the cool thing about layer masks, they are called non-destructive edits. And what that means is you've never totally destroyed your original photo. Your original photo is always there. If you ever want to go back to something, like if you don't like something that you painted on your layer mask, you can always go back and turn the color to white and put it back. So let's go back to this here. Let's say I don't like the way that I painted his face. I can go ahead and take a brush, and if I paint that, you see it can all come back. It's never totally gone. So I'm going to undo that because I did like it. But just know that if you want to put something back, you don't like the way you painted it, just use white and it puts it back. Even like on this one, if I want to put some of that green background back on the guy, if I get white and I paint it there, you can see it puts the original background that I had on the photo, which that kind of looks cool too. So just remember, you can always paint white and black on your layer mask and change it. So it's never destroyed totally. It's called non-destructive edit. The next thing I want to show you is how to put a background behind here called a gradient. A gradient is a color that fades from one color to another. So the way we can do that is if you go over here to your Layers tab and click on this little circle right there, this half black, half white circle, click on that and put gradient. Pull this layer behind everything so that it's your bottom layer. And now let's go ahead and change this gradient. So I'm going to double click in there and get this editor back up. And what I want to change is right here where it says gradient. Click the little arrow and open up some of these folders and try some different colors. So you can see you can put different color gradients behind your subject. I'm going to choose that one, but you're welcome to go through all of these and pick different ones and see how it looks. If you want to edit, I'm going to actually choose that one. If you ever want to edit that, you can still edit it further, so just double click on that again. And if you don't like any of the presets, remember you can customize it. If you change this angle right here, maybe you'll have it fade like diagonally. If you want to totally flip it the other way, you can do that. And if you want to change the colors in the gradient, if you double click inside that gradient bar, it gives you this. So maybe you want the pink to fade really slowly so there's not that much white. Maybe you want to change the color. If you click on these little squares, you can change the color. So maybe I want that to be black. You can change the color in the gradient by doing that. And then just say OK. So the next thing I want you to try after you have your gradient background is something called layer blending modes. And what those are, I want you to click on your subject photo. So click on that. And then over here where it says normal, I want you to experiment and see what all these different layer blending modes do. Notice how when I change this, it looks completely different how the one layer reacts with the background. So try some of these out and see if you have like a different effect that you might like better. Try them all out and see if you like one better, and you can leave it on that if you do. I think that one looks pretty cool and darken. And then you can also try the same thing with your landscape picture that you have on top. Try some of the layer blending modes that it has and see if it gives you a different effect that maybe you like better. I'm going to leave mine on exclusion. I kind of like that. Oh, also you can use opacity too. Like if you want your city to be a little bit more subtle, you don't want it to be too strong. Remember, you can use opacity on your layers. Just make sure that you're actually clicking on your actual photo and not your layer mask when you're doing these things. So at this point, if you want to be finished with your art, you can go ahead and just type your name on there or use the brush tool to draw your name. But if you want to take it a little step further, I want to show you something that I did. I went ahead and made another copy of my city, and I made it bigger, and I put an inverted layer mask on there so that it was showing just the background instead of inside of the guy. So I want to show you how you can do that if you want to. So I'll go ahead and hide that. What I did first was I copied my city. So I did Control A, Control C, and make sure that you're copying the actual city, and Control V. So I want to pull this below everything except for my, let me just delete this one that I did. I want to pull this below everything except for my gradient. And you can go ahead and make this a lot bigger because I don't want it to be cut off anywhere. So I enlarged my background a lot. I wanted to keep some of that horizon in there, and we'll go ahead and paste that like that. So what I want to do is I want to have a layer mask that's the opposite of this one here. So I can click on this layer mask and say select, load selection, and this time I want to go on my city layer, and I want to go to layer, layer mask, and I want to hide the selection. So I want the opposite as before. So there, now you can see I have the city, but not where the guy is. And at that point, I can go on my city and I can lower the opacity of that layer. So I want to take this city layer and I want to put this one on a different layer blending mode called luminosity. And then I want to still lower it even more so that it's very, very subtle so that my main subject still stands out the most. All right, so experiment with these things, your layer masks and your layer blending modes and opacity, and see what you can come up with.